Hello, this is Lucas, and in this video I'm going to be going over how we can convert data types in JavaScript. So in the last video I went over data types, so this video is just part 2 of that video. So let's say that we have a boolean, so let's just do we'll give any value, so value is equal to true. Okay, this means that this variable value is now a boolean and it is assigned true. So what we can do is we can check what data type this value is. So we can just do alert and then we can type in type of, and then we just have to pass in our variable, which is value. And now we can see whenever we refresh this page that we said that the page says this page says boolean, because what we are saying is we are setting value to true, which is a boolean, and then we are just printing out an alert to tell us what the type of value is, which is a boolean. Okay, but we can change this value, right, or we can convert it, or by using conversion. So we can change this value, which is a boolean, to a string, for example. So we can do value is equal to string, and then in brackets we just need to pass in our value. Now all this will do is it will convert this from a boolean to a string. Alright, but what we can also do is we can assign a brand new variable. So we can do for example, we can do string. Now we are creating a new variable with whatever this value is, which is a boolean. We'll convert it to a string, but we can just leave it as the same value, and then we can just print out this again. Go back to the page. You can see firstly it says boolean because we are printing out what the data type of value is, which is a boolean. But now we are converting it to string, and then whenever we do this again, you can see now it is a string because we have converted it to a string. Now, conversion is done automatically on some cases. So for example, let's say we have an alert and we want to add some kind of mathematical function in the alert. So let's say that we have two strings. So let's say we have a string called 6 and we have another string divided by, let's say, let's do 2. What's going to happen here is automatically these two strings are going to be converted into integers. Okay, so these, whenever we do a mathematical function, the values that are passed in are going to be converted into an integer. So you can see even though these two are strings, this is valid, this is allowed. And if we go back to our page, refresh this, you can see that we get an answer of 3, even though we have passed in two strings. But let's say we want to convert manually ourselves. Okay, so we want to convert a string into an integer. So let's say we have a string. We can give it any value. Let's say we'll just do 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's say that we want to convert this string into an integer. Well, firstly I'll just print out type of string, just so we can get the data type first. Now let's convert it. So last time what I did was I done string is equal to string, and then the value was placed inside the brackets. This time I'm going to do a bit differently. I'm going to create a brand new variable. So we're going to do let, and I'm going to name this num for number. I'm going to equal this to number, not integer, but number. And then we just have to pass in our string, which is just str. And then we can just print out the alert again, saying type of num. Okay. Now once we go back to our page, you can refresh, you can see firstly it is a string, right? So str is a string, but then we convert this string to a number and we assign it to the variable num. We print out the data type of num, and you can see now it is a number, or in other words it is an integer. Now we can only convert valid numbers or valid strings that can be numbers. So for example, this is valid because 1, 2, 3, 4, even though it's a string here, if we convert this to a number, it is a valid number. Okay, it is still a number. Now if we try to do something else, like for example, if we have like a sentence like hello world, for example, what we are trying to do now is this is going to be valid, okay? Because all we are doing here is we are alerting the type of this variable, which is a string. Right, so this is going to be valid. However, what we are doing here is we are trying to convert this string here into a number or an integer, okay? But there's no way that we can convert this into a number. So if you go back to our page, you can see firstly we have a string, and then we convert it. It is still a number, okay? Like, it is fine, but technically speaking, this is not correct, because if I try to print this out, for example, if we print this out, we do num, for example, we go back to our page, refresh this, you can see that we get NaN, right? Even though this, we will get a number, right? You can see the way this works. So if we refresh this, the first one is a string, okay? So str is a string, that's valid, that's 100% correct. But now the second time we are having an alert of num, you can see we get NaN. The reason why we get NaN is because there is no way the value num, we are trying to convert hello world into a number, okay, which makes no sense. And then whenever we print out num, you can see that we get NaN. However, num is still a number, even though we don't actually have anything assigned to it, right? It is still a number. This variable is a number, but we just cannot assign a string onto it, okay? An easier way to see this would be, let's say we just remove all of this, we don't need any of this. Let's just have an alert. Let's pass in a number. And inside of the brackets here, we are going to have, let's say, a value of 123. Okay, so all we are doing here is, whatever value we are inserting into here, we are going to convert into a number, and we are just going to alert that value. Okay, so let's say that we have a few of these. Let's say let's do 4, but let's just change the value of this. So the first one is valid. Okay, this will just return 1, 2, 3. Now the second one, let's say we have 1, 2, 3, 4, but then we have a character like H. This is going to return NaN, okay? Because there is an error reading a number that has a character within it. So this will return NaN because this is not a number. These first 4 values or characters might be numbers, but this one is not a number. So this will cause an NaN. Now if we have, let's say we have a boolean, if we pass in a boolean in here, for example, we pass in true, the value that we will return will be 1. Same thing for false, except it will return, you might guess that, 0. Okay? So that is the way that conversions work with numbers. We can quickly test that out, of course. So you can see the first one we get is 1, 2, 3. Second one we get is NaN. Third one is 1. And then the very last one, 4, is false. So we went over how we can convert numbers into strings, strings into numbers, booleans into strings, and so on. One last thing that I want to go over is booleans. Okay, so let's say we have another alert in here, and we are trying to convert any value into a boolean. So for example, let's say we have the value 1, for example. This will return true. Okay, so if it's 1, it is true. Now if we have the same thing, except we have the number 0 passed in, this will return a false. Okay, so 1 is for true, 0 is for false. Okay, now let's say we have another alert, and we also try to convert the value into a boolean. Let's say that we want to pass in a string, for example, hello world. This will return a true. Okay, if there's any value inside of here, it will be true if it's inside a string. Now if we have another alert and we are trying to convert something into a boolean, for example, firstly, if it's empty, this will return false. Okay, this will return false. It will also return false if we try to pass in something like a null, an empty string, a 0, If it's an undefined number, it will also return a false. If it's NaN, it will also return a false. They will all return false, but if we have some kind of value inside of the string, it will return a true. One other thing is, if we are trying to convert a value, right, into a boolean, this has to be empty for it to be false. However, if we have a space here, it will return true because there is actually a value here, even though there's no value, but there is a character here, and the character is space. Okay, so even though there's no value in here, it will still return true. So this will return true, but if there's no value, it will return false. So we can test this out. Oh, also one thing, just one last thing. If we have another alert, and we are trying to convert the value into a boolean. If we are trying to convert, if you look up top here, a boolean, when we pass in 0, is false. However, if we pass in a string that is 0, this will return true. The reason being is we are trying to convert a string into a boolean. Now you can see that we have a value assigned to it, so this will be true. Now you can see here we also have a value assigned to it, which is just a space. It's true. But now you can see here there's no value assigned to it, which is false. But now if you look at these two, this is the way that you can understand a bit easier. There is a string and it has a value assigned to it, so it's true. Same thing here. There is a string and there is a value assigned to that string, so it's a true. Now these two are different because this is a number. 0 is a number, but this is a string. Okay, we can quickly test this out. So if we refresh the page, you can see firstly we pass in 1. We try to convert that to a boolean. It's a true. Then we have false because we are trying to convert 0 into a boolean, which is false. Next one, we are trying to convert a string that has hello world in there, so it has a value in there. So that's going to return a true. Next one is we are trying to convert a string into a boolean that has nothing assigned to it. Well, it has something assigned to it, but there's nothing there. That will return a false. Then the last two, we have a string and it has a character, which is a space. Trying to convert that to a boolean. You can see that returns true. But even though there's none in there, there is still a character which is space. And then the exact same thing for the last one, it will return true, even though it's 0. Okay, it might be different to this one, but because it's a string, it is completely fine because this is not a number, this is a string, and there is a value assigned to that string. Okay, so that is about it for this video on conversions, how we can convert data types to another data type, and how we can actually check what data type that is. Okay, so I hope this video was helpful, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.